Welcome to Eternal Dread, where fear never sleeps. Tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is, because terror has no limits. If you're brave enough, like, share and comment, but beware, something might be watching you too. Now, turn off the lights, and let the dread begin. Something's wrong. Everything feels real. Too real. But my family keeps saying it's in my head. I try to believe them. I try. But I know something's happening. It started with my wife's whistling. The same tune every time she cooked. Always the same. I don't remember the name, but it was soft, easy. She said it helped her focus. A little good luck ritual, or something. Then this morning, she changed it. Off key, jarring like nails on glass. I didn't want to say anything. Didn't want to make a thing of it. But I couldn't focus on anything else. It was wrong. Just wrong. Thank God she served dinner, and it stopped. Next day. It happens again. The tune isn't a tune anymore. It's random, chaotic. I finally break. Ask her why she changed it. She stares at me. Blank. What are you talking about? She says. I've always whistled the same tune. Ice in my veins. Full stop. A nervous laugh. Go back to what I was doing. Try not to think about it. Try not to. My son comes home. My wife's still whistling. I grab him. Ask if he notices. What? It's the same damn song she's always whistled. If anything, I wish she'd change it up. Another hit. Blood freezing again. Am I losing my mind? 3 days. I try to ignore it. It's just the melody. Just a stupid melody. Then, on the 4th day, her voice changes. Lower. Rough. Like she's been smoking 2 packs a day. Over dinner, I ask if she has a sore throat. Blank stares. My son rolls his eyes. My wife laughs. Oh wow, you're exhausted. You need to take a break. The kids laugh too. Like it's funny. Like I'm the joke. So I laugh with them. Ha. 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 The next week, it's not just the whistling. It's not just her voice. Now it's my kids. My kids. My brown-haired kids. They walk in, and their hair is blonde. Bright blonde. Golden wheat blonde. Shock. Whiplash. Ask my wife if she let them dye it without telling me. Hand on my forehead. Concerned eyes. Honey, I'm really starting to worry. You should see someone. Push her hand away. Demand answers. She looks at me like I'm crazy. What are you talking about? They've always been blonde. I book a session with my therapist. The one who helped me through depression 2 years ago. I get there, go to shake his hand. No hand. His right arm is gone. Just a stump. I freeze. Stare. His face hardens. I lost it in an accident when I was 5. You know this. No. No, I don't. I don't know this. I see him. I see him shaking my hand after every session. Right hand. Firm grip. He leans forward. We've talked about this before. I've even compared it to your self-esteem issues. My mind is burning out. Melting down. He gives me meds. Says it's stress. It's all stress. I take them. Not because I believe him, but because I have no other choice. 2 weeks. My wife still whistles that awful song. Her voice still belongs to someone else. My kids are still blonde. Then my daughter comes home from school. Same backpack. Same clothes. Same face. Except for the teeth. Short. Crooked. Tiny little gaps between them. Not her perfect, straight smile. Not her teeth. And she laughs. Opens her mouth wide, stretching, stretching, stretching. Shows them off. Smiles like nothing's wrong. I lose it. Interrupt her. What happened to your teeth? Silence. Stares. My daughter bursts into tears. My wife rushes to her. Shoots me a look so sharp it could cut glass. My son stays behind. Glares at me. What the hell is wrong with you? She's had that since she was born. You know this. No. No, I don't. I sink onto the couch. Open-mouthed. Staring into space. Then it hits me. The photos. Rush to the walls. To the frames. My hands shake as I reach for them. Blonde kids. Her awful teeth. I black out. My wife says I was out for 4 hours. I wake up. My son sits beside me. Arms crossed. Staring. He doesn't blink. Minutes pass. He doesn't blink. Thomas, why are you looking at me like that? Silence. If this is about your sister, I'm sorry. He laughs. But it's not a laugh. It's a shrill, choking sound. His body twitches, convulses. He slams his fists against the chair over and over and over. My wife bursts into the room, hands out, pleading. Thomas, calm down, baby, everything's fine. He quiets, but still he stares. Stares at me. My daughter runs in, hands on her head. Oh my God, I'm sorry. My wife spins on her, furious. Marie, you know you're not supposed to leave the door open. You know what happens. What happens? What happens? I snap. What the hell is going on? Marie looks at me. Like I'm stupid. Like I'm not real. Dad, you work too much. You don't pay attention. He's always been like this. Like what? Autistic, she says. You know this. No. No, I don't. And that's where I am now. Living with a wife whose voice is wrong. A daughter whose smile isn't hers. A son who twitches and grins at me like a stranger. They all look at me like I'm the insane one. But I started searching. Digging. And I'm not alone. There are others. Others who've noticed the shifts. The wrong notes in the melodies. The misplaced hands. The family members that morph overnight. Something is happening. Something is changing us. Quietly. Silently. So pay attention. Notice the small things. The little changes. Or one day, you'll wake up surrounded by strangers. Let me start from the beginning. That Monday started out like any other. I arrived at work, filled my coffee cup, and stepped into my office. I'm a former Air Force major, now in training with NASA for a spot on the ISS. If all went according to plan, I should have been heading up there within the next year or so. But you know what they say, man plans and God laughs. As I sat down to look over the files on my desk, my phone rang. I was informed that I had a meeting in the conference room down the hall. A meeting? I don't have anything on my schedule. Who is it with? I asked. He didn't give a name, just said it was urgent. You better hurry, he doesn't seem the patient type. That didn't sound good. I hung up the phone and left my office, feeling anxious. What could this be about? I thought. I stepped into the conference room to see a man in a black suit seated at the oval-shaped table. He was a small man, but seemed to have a commanding presence. He had sharp eyes behind round glasses, and held a yellow file folder trimmed with black and red. He stood as I entered, Major Royce. He said, shaking my hand. Sir, have a seat, he said, motioning to the chair across from his. We have some things to discuss. I sat and waited. But the man said nothing. He just sat across from me, studying me for a solid minute. I cleared my throat. What's this about? You're doing exceedingly well in your training, he said, as he continued studying me. I understand you will be going up to the ISS soon. Are you looking forward to taking your place among the stars? I sat up a bit straighter. Yes, sir, I should be completing my training within the year. After that, it's just a matter of waiting for crew rotation. The man nodded. It's an amazing achievement. I'm sure your family is very proud. I smiled, but my smile quickly faltered under the man's lizard-like stare. I had yet to see him blink as he silently studied me. How would you like to go sooner? He said without breaking his gaze. Sooner? I'm not sure I follow, sir. Are you saying I could go up before crew rotation? I asked. No, I mean much sooner. And you wouldn't be going to the ISS. I blinked in confusion. Wait, are you saying there's another mission planned? Since when? And to where? It's being planned as we speak, he said as he placed his hand atop the seal on the file folder. So I take it you're interested? I nodded. Yes, I am. Good. But before I outline the mission, I need to know you're on board. The information in this file is sensitive, he said cryptically. I hesitated. This situation seemed unusual. I need to know some details before I make my decision. The man drummed his fingers on the file. No. I'm afraid this is a time-sensitive issue. If you aren't up for the task, we will have to move on to the next candidate. Now it was my turn to study him. He'd make one hell of a poker player, I thought. His cold, calculating eyes gave nothing away. I didn't like him, but damn it was I curious. After all, this was what I wanted, wasn't it? I joined the military, and then NASA in search of adventure. I'm sure there would still be a spot on me, on the ISS in the future. Okay, I said. I'm in. There was the smallest of grins on the man's face as he broke the seal on the file. Excellent. He opened the folder and removed a few sheets of paper before handing them over. They were pretty standard government NDAs, nothing I hadn't seen before. So CIA? I asked. No, he said. There wasn't quite a scoff, but I could imagine it. I signed the NDA paperwork and slid it across to him. So who are you? You can call me Neelan, he said as he took the paperwork and looked it over. I'm with an organization called the Bureau of Anomalous Research in Defense, or BARD. You won't have heard of us, and don't bother trying to look us up. No one else has either. The BRD? I asked. And what exactly do you research? Little green men. He almost smiled. We investigate various phenomena, both foreign and domestic. However, all you are privy to is what's in this file. He removed more documents from the file and passed them over to me. There were schematics, mission statements, and crew information. I scanned over the schematic. It was a massive research station, easily 10 times the size of the ISS. From an engineering standpoint, it was extremely impressive. Multiple labs, a common room, and quarters for a dozen crew. It was designed to rotate on a central axis. Using this rotational force or centrifugal force, the station could simulate something close to Earth gravity. It looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. This is an extremely ambitious project. I said, yes, it was. I looked up at him. Was? You mean we have this? Nealon nodded. The Icarus 1 has been in orbit for the past 5 years. The Icarus 1? I asked. Didn't Icarus fly too close to the sun? Yes, well, I didn't choose the name. Although there is something to be said about self-fulfilling prophecies. He said, leaning back in his chair. I squinted at him. What's that supposed to mean? He sat there silently for a moment, then said, 19 hours ago, the Icarus was hit by a massive solar storm. It was completely unexpected and knocked out all communications with the station. Shit, I said. Indeed, he said, folding his hands on the table. We don't know what other systems might have been affected by the storm. Our scientists may not even be alive, or if they are, how much longer they have, hence the urgency. We need you to get to the station as soon as possible and bring our people home. And in the event that the crew is lost to us, we need you to retrieve the research data and any viable test samples. What kind of test samples? I asked as I looked over the crew files. The crew was consisted mostly of scientists and a few engineers. Nealon drummed his fingers again. It is our hope that the crew is still alive. In the event that they are not, you will be briefed on the samples and data we need retrieved. I looked up at him, trying to read his expression. The man truly was unreadable. I looked back to the crew file. One in particular stood out. The man held multiple degrees across several fields, including astrophysics, molecular biology, and of all things zoology. Who is this Dr. Strom? I asked. He's our lead scientist on the station. Anything beyond that is not covered under your current NDA, said Nealon. I nodded. Okay, when do we launch? There is no we, Major Royce. You are going up alone, and you launch first thing tomorrow. What? I exclaimed, standing up from my chair. Are you insane? I need time to prepare. We need to run tests on the shuttle. You can't launch a mission on such short notice. Nealon stayed sitting. Major, we have taken all necessary precautions. We prepare for these eventualities. Normally we have a pilot on standby, but unforeseen circumstances have rendered them currently unavailable. I shook my head. I don't know about this. This launch is happening tomorrow, if you're not the man for the job. I put up my hands. No, I can do it. Nealon stood and shook my hand. Good, we're counting on you. Those people up there are counting on you. Don't let us down. And with that, he left. What was I doing? These missions typically up to 2 years to prepare for, and I was expected to go in less than 24 hours. Needless to say, I didn't sleep much that night. As I lay there in bed, thinking over the insanity of what I was about to do, I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my downloaded music. I smiled when I found what I was looking for and pushed play. As the strumming guitar began to flow from the speakers in my room, I felt my stress begin to melt away. My lips formed the words automatically along with David Bowie as he began to sing about the starman in the sky. I remember listening to it when I was a kid, staring up at the stars and night sky and thinking that someday I'd get up there. That someday I'd be a starman. The shuttle they had prepared was like nothing I had ever seen before. It was smaller and sleeker than the typical shuttles that NASA uses. I found myself wondering what else the BARD had hidden away from the world. Once I was suited up, Nealon met me before heading out to the launch pad. Major Royce, I want to thank you for service to this great nation, he said as he saluted. I returned the gesture. We will be with you on comms, and your helmet is wired with a video feed. Again, if there are no survivors, we will give you further instructions. I nodded. You can count on me, sir. My heart was pounding as I made my way down the walkway to the shuttle hatch. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. This launch wasn't strictly official. It would never be in history books or documented in any way beyond a sealed file folder marked classified, but I didn't care. I was finally headed for the stars. I settled into my seat and strapped in, running my fingers over the control panels. I snapped my helmet into place, hearing the seals hiss as they pressurized. As I stared up into the cloudless blue of the morning sky, I swelled with pride, thinking of the heroes that have gone before me. 10, 9, 8. The countdown sounded over the shuttle comms. 7, 6, 5, 4. My heart pounded as adrenaline began to flow. 3, 2, 1. The thrusters fired. The shuttle trembled as it began to lift and soar upwards. G-forces pinned me to my seat as the rocket tore its way through the atmosphere. The blue of the sky turned darker and darker until it finally faded to black, and the stars popped and shined with a clarity unlike anything I'd ever seen. As my shuttle left the grip of the Earth's atmosphere, the rocket boosters detached and fell away. "How's it looking up there, Major?" asked Harry, the comms officer. "Everything looks good from up here, Command. How we looking on your end?" "Roger that. All systems show green down here." "How's that view?" I looked around in awe that I was finally here. "It's beautiful, Harry. You gotta see it someday." "Major," said Nealon, "proceed on course to the Icarus." "Copy. Proceeding on course." The Icarus One loomed large and foreboding in the darkness of space. I had been concerned about attempting to dock onto the rotating station, but as I approached, I could see that more than just the comms systems had been knocked out. "Command, looks like the station is completely dark. I'm seeing no signs of power from here." I said. "Copy," came Harry's voice. "Continue to station and commence docking procedure." "Copy, commencing docking." I took a steadying breath as I brought the shuttle into position. I had done this countless times in simulations with a 99.8% success rate. As the docking hatch came closer and closer, that 0.2% burned in my mind. Fortunately, the controls on the BARD shuttle were smoother than I could have wished for. I sighed in relief as the docking hatch slid into place with a satisfying clank. Shuttle docked. Preparing to enter station. "Roger that, Major. Proceed with caution." The airlocks hissed as I unlocked the hatch door to the Icarus. The entry into the station was like a dark portal into the abyss. I activated my helmet's lamps as I floated through the passage. "Command, I'm inside. The station is completely dark." I said. "Copy that. There should be an access terminal on the wall next to the hatch entryway," said Harry. I turned around until I found the terminal and floated over to it. Tapping the keyboard activated the system. I quickly found the lighting controls and switched them on. The lights in the corridor flickered to life, illuminating the white sterile hallway walls and floors. The readings on the terminal showed that the communication systems and the centrifugal engines were offline. "Royce, the offline systems can't be accessed from that computer. You'll need to get to the engine room and the communications deck to assess what damage has been done," said Harry. "Disregard that, Major," interrupted Nealon. "Search the station for the crew. Their survival and the recovery of our data is the priority here." "Copy that," I said as I pushed off the wall and glided down the hallway. The station was eerily silent. After searching through the crew cabins and the botany lab, I made my way into the common area. There was no sign of the dozen crew members to be found. Where could they have gone? I exited the common area and was about to enter the neighboring room when I thought I heard a voice coming from down the hall. "Hello," I called out. "Is someone there?" A man floated out of a room at the end of the hallway. "Hello," he said as he began slowly gliding towards me. As he got closer, I recognized him. "Dr. Strom. I'm Major Royce. I was sent up here to bring you all home." "Home?" he questioned. "Back to Earth." As he approached, I realized he looked different from the photo in his file. His skin was gaunt and had almost a purplish tint to it, and his proportions seemed just a bit off. Not by a lot, but just enough to look strange. His head seemed a bit more bulbous than in the picture, and his extremities seemed a little too long for the jumpsuit he was wearing. Yes, home," I said. "Where are the others?" Strom turned his head side to side, as if glancing around for his crew. I'm not quite sure. They should be here. They were here." As he turned, I could see a small bandage covering his right ear. "Dr. Strom, are you hurt?" I asked. He looked at me, his bloodshot eyes filled with confusion. "Hurt?" Yes, I was hurt, but I'm all right now. I'd like to go home." I nodded. "Of course. I'll get you home. We just have to find the others first." "The others?" he asked, cocking his head to the side. "Oh, they won't be joining us." "No, No, they won't. Well, yes, they will, just not like they were. He laughed. Forgive me, Major, I'm not quite sure what I'm saying. That's fine. Let's just check that injury, then we'll find the others and get you all home. He nodded and moved into the common area. I floated over next to him and examined the bandage on his ear. Up close, I could see that the white fabric was darkened and crusted with blood. There were dark lines on his skin, spreading out from under the bandage. When did this happen? I asked. Dr. Strom shrugged. Yesterday? Last month? Eons ago? I can't really tell. He turned to face me. I'm not alone in here anymore. I tried to give him a reassuring smile, but the way he was speaking was a little too unsettling. When I removed the bandage, I nearly gagged. If I hadn't been wearing my helmet, I'm sure I would have. Dr. Strom's right ear was swollen and discolored. A black viscous fluid oozed out from it and floated in the air between us. Jesus, I said under my breath before pushing the soiled bandage back into place. I moved back away from him as Neelan's voice came over my comms. Major, you need to get the data and get off of that station now. I had forgotten about the video feed. Command was seeing everything I was. What the hell is wrong with him? I asked. All you need to know is that Dr. Strom is now designated a biohazard and will not be coming back with you. Get away from him and retrieve my data. Copy that, I said, never taking my eyes off of Strom. Where will I find the data? Head to the biology lab. The files you need should be accessible from there, said Harry. I'm on my way, I said as I turned to head down the corridor. Where are you going? Asked Strom from behind me. I turned back to face him. I just need to go get some things and look for the other crew members. I need you to wait here until I come get you. Okay. Strom smiled wide. His gums had turned the same oily black as the ooze that dripped from his head. You're not coming back for me, but that's okay. I didn't know what to say, so I just turned and continued on to the biology lab. I searched every room on the way, but still there was no sign of the crew. Command, I can't find the rest of the crew. Never mind the crew, said Neelan. If they are there, they may be infected as well. Infected with what? I asked. Unknown. Bullshit, I said, losing my patience. You know what this is, Neelan. I want answers. Retrieve the data and samples, and I will tell you what you want to know. I grunted in frustration as I pushed off another wall. You fucking better. This whole situation was fucked. I was up here on a top-secret research station with an unknown biohazard. If something went wrong, there was no help coming. They wouldn't risk another mission no matter how valuable the data was. I entered the lab and found a cold storage unit containing several vials of a purplish-black liquid. Are these the samples? I asked. Yes, said Neelan. Remove them carefully and place them into the transportation cooler, said Harry, and Major, move quickly. Do not let the samples get too warm. I took a steadying breath and began removing the samples and placing them into the cooler as carefully and quickly as I could. With the samples stored, I glided over to the computer terminal. Command, what do I need to do here? Do I download specific files or just rip out the hard drive? Better just remove the hard drive, Royce, said Harry. Agreed, time is of the essence, added Neelan. I removed the tool bag from the pouch on my suit and prepared to start removing the computer housing, but then I paused. On the screen, I saw the station camera access point. Would Neelan really give me the answers I wanted? I didn't think so. Maybe I could find some answers right here. I sat down the tool bag and selected the video files. Major, we don't have time for this. Remove the hard drive and leave the station, demanded Neelan. I ignored him and scrolled through the camera files, looking for anything out of place. Major Royce. There, the timestamp showed just before the solar storm. The feed showed Dr. Strom in the biology lab. He was dressed in a biohazard protection suit. On the lab table in front of him was a dark egg-shaped stone about the size of a football. He was attempting to drill into the stone. Suddenly the camera shook and the lights in the lab went out. Shortly after the storm hit, the emergency lighting came on, painting the lab in shades of red. Strom had stepped away from the table, clearly distressed. But Strom wasn't what I was focused on. The stone on the table had cracked open, a dark fluid leaking out from the cracks. After a moment, Strom noticed it too. He slowly approached the table, bending down and examining the substance. For some reason, perhaps a lapse in judgment, Strom reached out and touched the slimy liquid. As he pulled back, the ooze stuck to his gloved hand. He tried flicking it off, but the ooze seemed to take on a life of its own, clinging to the suit and worming its way up his arm. Strum panicked and flailed, trying to get the dark fluid off, but nothing he did seemed to stop it. The ooze climbed to his head and melted through the hood of the suit, latching itself to the side of Strom's head. The feed ended. I scrolled through the video files, trying to find what happened to the rest of the crew. There had to be answers here. "Is it time to leave now?" said Strom. I turned to see him in the entryway to the biology lab. The black fluid seeped from his eyes and ran down his face like tears. As he pushed his way into the room, globs of the stuff trailed off of him and floated through the air. I swallowed. "No. Not yet. Can you tell me what happened to the crew?" Strom floated across the room to the observation window. He was silent for a moment as he looked out over the sea of stars. "Dr. Strom," I prompted, "where are the crew? It is time to leave now," he said as he turned to face me. "Royce, get out of there," said Harry. I shook my head as I backed away. "I'm sorry, Dr. Strom, but I can't let you leave." Suddenly, Strom launched himself across the room and collided into me. We both fell back into the hallway, bouncing back and forth off of the walls. I tried to push him away, but Strom reared his head back and began ramming it into my helmet over and over again. Blood and black ooze began to cake my helmet's visor. "Get the fuck off of me," I yelled. He didn't relent. Over and over he slammed his face against the helmet glass. I had to do something. I was quickly losing my vision. I reached down to the tool pouch on my suit and felt the screwdriver handle. I began stabbing Strom with it over and over again. I must have gotten a lucky shot, because in the next moment he went limp. I couldn't see through the gore coating my helmet, and to my horror, the black ooze was beginning to eat its way through the glass. I quickly unlatched the seals and threw the helmet away. It drifted across the room through floating rivers of the black ooze. Strom's body floated a few feet away, the screwdriver lodged into his eye socket. I was about to make my way back to the shuttle to get the hell out of there when I realized that his undamaged eye was still following me. "Dr. Strom." His body twitched. "Dr. Strom is not here," he said, his voice hauntingly monotone. "Who are you? What are you?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Do you truly not know?" he asked in that same monotone voice. "Why else would you reach for the stars, if not to climb to the heights of those who came before you? Or is it simply hubris that drives you? When you look up at the stars, do you not see us looking back? Have you so easily forgotten your old gods? They have not forgotten you." I shook my head. "I don't understand. You are not meant to. You cannot stop what is coming." "I stopped you," I said. "You killed a vessel, nothing more. There will soon be another." As he said that, I felt something cold and wet hit my ear. In a panic, I reached up trying to get a hold of the oily fluid, but it was too small. I felt as it squirmed and wriggled through my ear and into my head. "No, no, no. What did you do?" I demanded, but Strom's corpse had gone still. I reached for the comms button. Command. "Hello? Can anyone hear me? Nealon? Nealon, you bastard." I thought it had gone dead, but then I heard Nealon's voice. "Major, I can only imagine how you are feeling right now, and I am truly sorry. But I need you to continue your mission." "What?" "Get the samples and the hard drive and stow them aboard the shuttle," he said. "You can fix this, right? You have a cure, you have to." I could hear the panic in my voice. "Once the samples and data are stowed, I need you to stay on the Icarus until a rescue crew arrives." "How long will that take?" I asked. "Will I still be me when they get here?" Nealon was silent for a moment. "Nealon?" Finally, he said. "Finish your mission and wait for further instructions." "Nealon? Nealon? God damn you, answer me." I yelled. "He's gone," said Harry. "I'm sorry, Royce." I sighed in exasperation. "What do I do, Harry? I wish I had answers for you," he said. "Be careful, up there on those wax wings." Wax wings? I floated there for a moment, feeling lost. I thought that Strom was out of his mind, the things he was saying. But what if he wasn't? This was all beyond my understanding. If Strom or whoever was speaking through him was right, then there was no way Nealon could hope to control whatever this was. I knew what Harry meant now. I couldn't let this get back to Earth. I made my way down the winding corridors of the station, heading for the command deck. On the way, I passed through the common area and down the hallway where I had first encountered Strom. As I passed by the room he had come from, I heard a thud impact the door. I turned back to read the label above the door. Engine room. Hesitantly, I reached out and slid the door open. When I saw what was inside, I no longer doubted what I had to do. I had found the rest of the crew. Their bodies were tangled together in a mass of dark web like slime. Their torsos were bloated and round as something wriggled within them. Arms and legs jutted out of the mass at odd angles, twitching occasionally. But the most haunting part was the way that all of their eyes had turned to face me as I entered the room. They were still alive. None of them spoke, they only looked at me, pleading for help, asking me why this had happened. I was shaking in terror as I backed out of the room and slid the door closed. I had to end this. I could feel the entity in my head now. It twisted and warped my perceptions. I thought I was heading for the command deck, but I kept finding myself back at the hatch to my shuttle. After the third time of circling back to the hatch, I realized I had to remove the risk of leaving the station. With a heavy heart, I reached for the disconnect lever. The thing in my head screamed in rage as I watched my shuttle drift off into the void of space. My mind melted away and reformed over and over. I kept finding myself in rooms that I had no memory of entering. Eventually, I found myself on the command deck. I realized I was in control. The other was dormant for the moment. I glided over to the control console and found the station's thruster controls. Space stations occasionally require course corrections. For this, they use jets of compressed air to propel the station in the desired direction. I felt the entity rising to the surface as I worked. I had to hurry. I made the calculations and set the course. With the push of a button, I engaged all of the station's compressed air thrusters and launched the Icarus 1 on a collision course for the Sun. I made sure to empty the reserves for the thrusters as well. If I lost control completely, I didn't want the entity redirecting the station. As the thrusters fired and emptied, I felt the entity asserting control. It tried to stop the launch, but it was too late. I felt my mind breaking apart as my fists smashed against the thruster control console, and I screamed in someone else's rage. At last, the entity receded and my body was mine again. I made my way to the command terminal and began typing out this message. I can only hope the station's internet connection will hold out long enough to get the message out. You deserve to know the truth. There are things out here in the void. Watch the stars. Good luck and goodbye, Starman. When you come from a small town, the world itself feels equally small. You sort of imagine the world as a series of little towns, interconnected by little roads. Your sense of scale is off until you leave your comfort zone and step out of your home. It's when you start chasing the horizon that you realize just how far it really stretches. That's what it was like for me growing up in the Czech Republic. I come from a small community near Litvinov. Growing up there, all you heard people talk about was what they were going to do when they really started living. The places they'd go, the sights they'd see, the opportunities they'd grasp. There was the usual bravado, like the guys telling me they'd have a dozen girlfriends the second they got to Prague. Others just talked about what cars they'd like to have. But then there were those of us who just wanted an honest shot in life. Those of us who wanted to create something bigger than ourselves. And to do that, we had to follow the roads and not look back. I studied in Prague and 1 semester in Germany for an exchange program. By the time I graduated, I had a junior position at a small telecom company. It kept me going while I worked on my master's degree. A lot of late nights working effectively 10, 13-hour days, making do with almost nothing but an apartment that can generously be described as a closet. But I pulled through. I got a degree in optoelectronics with a focus on fiber optic communications. I was picked up by a company working with hospital equipment and almost tripled my salary overnight. That single point in my life made my world wide open. I could suddenly travel the world and take expensive vacations. I could wear suits. I could wear a shirt and tie to work without looking pretentious. I was taking a clear and conscious step up in the world, and the view was spectacular. Pretty damn far from having cigarettes with my friends after a quick meal at Sokolovna. I got promoted to team lead in 2008 and was made project lead in 2013. I got married and had 2 beautiful children. Life slowly settled into a comfortable hum, where I could want for nothing, and I could step into the unknown with confidence. An expert in my field, and someone others could look up to. But things took a turn in the autumn of 2014. One of the company's investors stepped up to gain a majority share and immediately turned things around. Not with layoffs or savings, but in a new direction. We were to gradually step away from medical hardware and move into informatics and communication. With a partner name like Hatchet, we were expecting cuts, but these people were all about expansion. We got a new name, logo, and some people were added to the company board. Locals mostly, but 1 or 2 Americans would fly in a couple of times per year for project updates. It wasn't an instantaneous change, but we got reassigned to other projects. The pay got better though. I was already way above average, but this kicked it to a whole new level. We also got an extra vacation week in July, so they didn't get a lot of pushback. I worked with Hatchet for a number of small projects over the years, mostly related to their early advances in AI, but also more experimental projects. Imaging systems that could be used in the dark, remotely charged static electronics, all kinds of weird and imaginative experiments. Most of it could be frustrating, but it was incredibly interesting. Some of the most engaging work I've ever had. I was eventually assigned to a project lovingly called Poldness. I think they called it that because they thought it'd drive us mad someday. It was meant to be a far-fetched, maybe it can't be done, kind of project with an impossible goal. It was meant to be a surveillance system where we could identify a person to a high degree of accuracy without using blood, DNA, or facial recognition. That was the pitch. We experimented a bit with phone tracking software, but that wasn't accurate enough. Phones could be switched or exchanged. We needed something that tracked the person, not their hardware. But it couldn't be invasive. It was one of the senior technicians that came up with the idea for the first draft of our system. Bodon was a goddamn genius. The guy learned to code as a teenager by having a Java handbook in his bathroom, and he wrote his first program on a plastic sheet with a Sharpie. This guy lived and breathed code. His idea was simple. What if we could scan people instead of their phones? Kind of like a sonar or echolocation. The idea was basically to tweak the signals to allow for an echo or a ping. This, in turn, would be translated into an image, which could be used to identify a person. It was a long shot, but that was the whole point of our project. To chase long shots and to make daring assumptions. We threw things at the wall to see what'd stick, and the management loved it. We got the full go-ahead for our first prototype in autumn 2016. We ran into a lot of problems, as could be expected, not only in the hardware itself, but in latency disruptions and a dozen other things. The slightest drop of rain could send the system crashing down, and the best we could get at first was a vague white blob on a screen. You couldn't identify anyone from that, but over the course of a few years, technology improved. Better coverage, better signal tuning, better hardware. We managed to compensate for atmospheric interruption and poor signal coverage. Latency became a non-issue. The white blob turned into a vague humanoid, which presented another challenge. We couldn't get the signal to properly resonate with the appearance of a person. We couldn't compensate for clothing, skin color, eye color. Hell, we kept getting problems with fingernails showing up as flashes of white on the screen. It was just one problem after another. It was bad enough that it ground the project to a complete stop for months, until a woman named Jitka came up with an idea. "Let's just crank it up," she said. "Go past the clothes. Check the bones." "Why would we do that?" I asked. "Bones have identifiers," she continued. "Cranial structure, density, shape, vertebrae, dental records, damage, patterns, where it's like a fingerprint." So we tried it. We cranked it up, and we tried a bone scan. Something beneath the immediate surface. I'll never forget that moment. Our entire team leaning over a screen as the image rendered. Suddenly a hum, followed by a crystal-clear image of Bodon's skeleton as he returned from the bathroom. People were hugging and cheering like we'd landed on the moon. I think Jitka actually kissed Bodon. This changed the scope of our project from maybe it can't be done to we got something to show. It was incredibly exciting, and we got an immediate 30% bump to our project financing. We brought in an osteopathic doctor from Spain, a senior hardware engineer, and a telecom specialist. We were no longer working on the Poldness. This was the osteohaptic signal imager system, or as we lovingly called it, the Rattler. See, the reason this works so well is that the skeleton effectively rattles as the waves pass through at just the right frequency. It's like a wind chime. Whoever gets scanned suffers no adverse effects, but on repeated exposure they might experience a mild sensation. It passes quickly and feels no stranger than a sense of déjà vu. A couple of people exposed to it during sleep described it as a bump in the night. We built up a library of skeleton identifiers, using data from various European universities. We collected pretty much everything and used programs to standardize it into comparable data points. At first it allowed us to make vague descriptions of a person. Male, 50s, clubfoot, that kind of thing. But over time we could get more and more specific. Female, 25 years old, Northern Scandinavian. In the summer of 2021, we could map out 21 identifiers with a 75 to 95% accuracy. As long as we knew what to look for, description-wise, we could find them. The only problem was our hardware constraints. We couldn't do large amounts of scans in massive areas. We had to know in advance where to look. That changed in autumn 2021. We were to give a demonstration for our lead investor, and if successful, we'd expand the range of the system tenfold. We used a couple of presets to reliably show the data of 5 sample people that we'd collected. We showed the process and the reliability of the scans in real time, explaining as we went exactly what they were looking at. It was impressive, but for someone without the know-how, all they had was a name on the screen. That is, until I took the presentation off the rails. "Do you have a wife?" I asked. "I do," they answered. "I suppose you brought them along," I said. "It's nice to travel together, yes?" I did, yes. "With your permission, would you mind me showing you where she is?" He was hesitant, but agreed. He listed off identifiers, and we pointed the system in a general direction. We excluded certain places and limited the scope of the scan to about 3 blocks in downtown Prague. As the system listed off and excluded signals that couldn't match the identifiers, more and more candidates popped up. I asked a few follow-up questions, like if she had any broken bones or titanium screws, which excluded a couple more. Finally, we got a perfect match. I gave him an address and asked him to call her to confirm. "And ask her to try the fruit dumplings," I smiled. "They're excellent." He called her. A couple of intense seconds later, he confirmed it. She was at a cafe downtown, just like the Rattler predicted, and she hadn't felt a thing. The lead investor was floored. Things exploded into action. We got in touch with the government through a high-end contact, and we got to pull the curtain back on the infrastructure we'd been passively, and somewhat illegally, working with. We didn't just get a stamp of approval. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie, especially law enforcement applications and government intelligence. This was exactly what Hatchet wanted, a tool they could rent out in secret for a perk no one even knew existed. They'd be bathing in money. The Rattler got more accurate as our infrastructure improved. Our range expanded from a couple blocks to about 10 square kilometers. We had people knocking on our doors begging for us to let them hand us data. Family history, criminal records, forensic data. We fed everything into that machine. We had to put up a queue system for those freely handing us classified medical information on a government level. And in return, the Rattler was put into practice. Not only did we start to locate people, but we started gathering data on pretty much everyone. We could do a ping on thousands of people and see straight into their bones, and all they'd feel was a bump in the night. And we'd know everything. We worked in tandem with Hatchet and the government. We had 2 teams, a development team and a batch team. The batch team worked with scan orders and confirmations that dropped in from our clients, while the development team worked to increase efficiency, accuracy, and better components. The system was still, by and large, held together by duct tape and dreams. But that also meant that we couldn't easily replicate it, and that our team wasn't replaceable. Both Bodan and Jitka were still on the project, but had gotten cushier positions over time. It did feel a bit strange working so hush-hush, but there is a long history of distrusting surveillance systems in this country. Any hint of government overreach in this manner might send people screaming into the streets, and we didn't want to bring any unwanted attention. So it was all experimental and exploratory ventures. It was autumn 2023. The rain wouldn't stop, and the distant thunder kept me awake. I could almost smell the ozone from a nearby lightning strike. I woke up 2 seconds before my phone rang. It was one of our government contacts calling me at 5 in the morning. "We need an order pushed through." "Now," she huffed. "Your technicians refused to comply." "Then there must be a reason." "They say it's not possible," she continued, "that you can't collect enough data. You got no identifiers." "Then we can't do anything until you get it," I explained. "You know the requirements." "This is life or death," she spat back. "And if you're as clever as your job title assumes, you damn well help me pick life on this." By the time I got to the office, there was a crowd gathering. Police officers, government officials, senior hardware technicians. My government contact, a woman named Christina, pulled me aside to explain the situation. There was a suspected serial killer about to leave the country. This person, nicknamed Jezevek, had a partner that was about to smuggle them out of the EU. It was a cat-and-mouse game that pointed to one thing: they were leaving by train today. The problem was, we didn't know a lot about Jezevek, and our system required identifiers to find them. So we were at an impasse. We knew what train stations to observe, but we didn't know enough about the target to find them. We could scan those people over and over, but without knowing what to look for, we'd be blind. So that covers what we don't know, I said. Do we have any kind of applicable info? Not much, Christina sighed. We know an old woman they're related to. She was the first victim. But we know little to nothing about them. Jezevek could be young, old, anything. That gave me an idea. Christina handed me all information she had about the old woman. We turned our attention to her burial site and scanned the remains for genetic identifiers. That, in turn, could be used to ping for similarities. I forwarded this to the technicians, who began to filter out irrelevant data. But there was another problem: scope. We were dealing with thousands of potential targets in 4 separate locations, all to be scanned within a fraction of the time we usually needed. This could take hours, but we had to boil it down to minutes. So we tore our hair out, and Jitka elbowed her way in to solve the problem. Just crank it up, she said. It's harmless. We've checked over and over. We are 10 times lower than potential risk factors, and even then, it's only something to be worried about when considering long-term exposure. Of course, she was right. We'd interrupt cell phone traffic, but we got the green light immediately. For those traveling through Prague by train that day, many didn't notice the rattler coming online. A couple of people got goosebumps, a few calls disconnected. Some people might have noticed the hair on their necks stand up. Some might have wandered into a room only to forget what they were about to do. It was minor inconveniences at worst. As we honed in on our target, using the identifiers from the first victim, we got a couple of matches. Bodan waved at me from across the room, looking worried. Backlogs, he mentioned. We got backlogs. I didn't understand what he was talking about, so I hushed him. So did everyone else. The system was clearly overloaded. Backlogs were to be expected. Finally, we got a match. 91% accuracy, a single target. The second potential target was, at best, 60% accurate. People were yelling over one another, and they pulled up a camera feed from the train station on the break room TV. Christina pointed excitedly as the order was given to snatch them off the platform. We got them, she smiled. Jezevek. Finally. We got a clear view of the target from an overhead camera. A bald man in his mid-40s with distinctive ears, deep dark eyes, and a taped-on plastic smile. He'd be hard to pick out of a lineup. He could walk into a crowd and disappear, but now we had him. But Bodan seemed less confident. He came up to me and pulled me aside as Christina relayed the information to a field team. This is a bad idea, Bodan said. We're focusing too much on too little. We're not even at quarter capacity, I sighed. How is that too much? Yes, but you're focusing it all on one person, he continued. This level is supposed to be used for data gathering. This configuration aimed at one single person can be dash. He stopped as something in the room shifted. Something changed. A single person tilted their head curiously. We all saw something on the camera feed. Jezevek, waiting for his train, suddenly shivered. I looked back at our order screens running in the batch room, and it was just red warnings running over and over and over on repeat. The backlogs were coming through, bursting through the system like a built-up dam of scan orders. See, it is one thing for a person to be scanned once every few hours or so. That's harmless. But this was a single person being homed in on from 10 different sources at once, to a multiplier of 1,000. It was such a massive level of targeting that the scans themselves were doing something we'd never anticipated. This thing was made to rattle, and that's what it did. It rattled. Medically speaking, the vibrations were so intense that they effectively serrated and broke the fat, blood vessels, and muscles connected to the bone, causing air pockets to build and burst. And we saw it live on a muted surveillance camera. The target collapsed to the ground. Their facial tissue hung loose, causing their expression to loosen like they were melting into the ground. Muscles twitched and died as they were severed, sending limbs into bouts of inhuman contortion and tissue death. I could see the eyes turn bloodshot even on a black and white screen. I could see all the way into Jezevek's wide-open mouth as their tongue turned purple and the skin retracted from their teeth. People in the crowd were live streaming it from the platform. Someone in the room was playing it. I heard this animal-heaving noise, like a horse trying to gargle. I could hear bones snap out of place as nerves twisted and turned, bending the body to an unrecognizable pile. It looked like their spine was trying to swallow itself, only to choke on their navy blue hoodie. Skin! Jezevek cried. Skin! Skin! But those words turned to cries, and those cries turned to mewling nothings. By the time the police arrived, Jezevek was already dead. We all just stood there for a moment. None of us had considered this as even a slight possibility. Even Bodan, who had suspected something might happen, couldn't believe it. It was beyond the worst, most unimaginable nightmare. I think Jitka left to throw up in the bathroom. I broke the silence. "Shut everything down," I demanded. "Shut it down, and we'll talk tomorrow." Christina gave me a protesting look, but I shook my head. This was non-negotiable. We were pulling the plug and taking a day to process this. I don't think this was on the news. No one knew that this person was Jezevek, and to onlookers it looked like an awful seizure of some kind. Having police on the scene was mistaken for someone trying to help. I'm sure it was mentioned here and there, and I'm sure the video still circulates online. But there were no cries from Parliament about trying us for manslaughter. There were no protests in the streets. The Rattler was still our dirty little secret, and we were just starting to see how dirty it could get. I barely slept that night. I kept hearing those distorted screams, played through a phone speaker in the back of my mind. Skin. Was that the last thing he'd felt? His skin? My stomach hurt just thinking about it. And when I finally closed my eyes and felt that bump in the night, my eyes shot wide open. Was it an actual bump in the night, or was the system still running? What if that thing got in the wrong hands? Hell, what if it got into any hands? There were a lot of opinions at the morning meeting the next day. Some wanted to shut it down completely. Others talked about safeguards. Problem was, the cat was out of the bag. Even if we patched things up, it could be undone. It's like finding out your phone can be used as a gun. Sure, you might keep the lock on, but you'll stop putting it up to your ear to talk. "I say we purge it," Bodan said. "Shut the whole thing down. Trash the servers. Scorched earth. We'll be prosecuted," Jitka sighed. "Destruction of company property, at best." "So," Bodan sneered, "don't you realize the scope of this thing? There are 100 backups in a dozen locations," I said. "It would require a calculated attack on all backups, simultaneously, coordinated with a dozen technicians. Even if we could, we have to dash." Before I could finish my thought, there was a beep. I turned to the batch room. Turns out, the system was never really shut down. See, it does this thing when it processes reports that it runs a background loop archiving and integrating everything. Basically, it takes data and melts it into the code, sort of like an information soup. But we had gotten hundreds of thousands of logs on that one person entered into the system. Jezevek had been more thoroughly scanned than any other person in recorded history. The information we'd gathered was massive. We could see not only the bones, but the surrounding musculature. We could see the way the body contorted frame by frame from every possible angle, and the excruciating snap of every ligament and nerve. The system had kept running in standby, boiling all this information down to the background algorithm, connecting it to data points, criminal records, forensic data, medical records, family history, and a dozen other connected channels. Jezevek had, overnight, utilized the full capacity of the Rattler to be broken down, scanned, and inserted into the system on a microscopic level. And that final beep, turning the light green, showed us that the system was finished with its calculations. We didn't understand what we were looking at. This wasn't just a matter of compiling data. This was essentially translating a physical person into code. We'd been getting warnings from our server banks all night, but the system was programmed to recompile itself and try again. This was a system that was made to run in the background for months on end, and it had gained so much information about this one man that we almost went over capacity in a single night. Bodan just shook his head, trying to comprehend the scale of it. "I say we burn it," he said. "This thing's gonna need a fucking exorcism." I tried to be diplomatic, but Bodan was right. We had to install a kill switch, and we needed it yesterday. I got the go-ahead to cancel our service extension to 3 major eastern metropolitan areas, and I told the lead investor that we were putting it all into maintenance mode pending investigation and review. There were no protests. Jitka called our boss, who in turn promised to check with the off-site technicians about bringing the backups and the archive down. It was rough and rude, but it was necessary. But all through the day, whenever I got a shiver or shake, I could feel my heart skip a beat. My life could be turned inside out at the flick of a button, and we didn't have enough safeguards to make sure it didn't. It was like we were working with a live bomb in the next room, and we were figuring out which cables to cut. We worked late into the night. Bodan was putting in what checks and balances he could, while Jitka was coordinating the shutdown with our technicians, figuring out what to keep and what not. I was trying to calm our investors and overseas partners, but it was futile. They just saw dollar signs being flushed down the toilet. Somewhere around midnight, I felt a chill going up my back. That was my last straw. It might have been nothing, but on the minuscule chance that it wasn't, I took action. I called my wife and asked her to take a morning train to her sister in Linz south of the border. I slept on the couch in the break room, answering calls all night long. When I finally opened my eyes after a solid 3-hour sleep, the morning sun had broken through the curtains. We'd done what we could. I lumbered over to Bodon. He was in his late 30s, but had reverted to a caffeine-chugging teenager to get through the night. I think the stress of things had nicked a couple more hairs from his balding head. The screen kept flashing with white text on a black console window, repeating patterns and commands, errors and missing files, and a couple of lines that kept repeating. "I don't know why it's doing that," Bodon said, pointing to the screen. "See that?" I looked a bit closer. A repeated command line. "It does something, but I don't know what," he continued. "No errors flare up, but the process deletes itself when you interact. Then it returns. Like something peeks out, then runs away." And the line kept repeating. Patternless. Random. Skin. 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 Jitka and I had a coffee, looking over the diagnostics. We could see some background services still running, but that was all above board. Nothing we didn't recognize. But Bodon wasn't convinced. He couldn't look away from those repeating lines. "Looks like the towers are disconnecting," Jitka added. "That's good. It's at very low capacity," Bodon sighed. "But it's not harmless. At least it's under control." Then Jitka dropped her coffee cup. It shattered, spilling black coffee across the floor. Her hand was shaking. "Sorry," she said. "Nerves." We camped out in the office, waiting for the system to go offline. More and more sections were disconnecting, and I could see the weight on Bodon's shoulders melt away. He crashed in the break room, curling up in a fetal position on the company couch. There was a white post-it on the screen, simply reading, "Wake me up if we're about to die." I felt like I was on guard duty, making sure the screens didn't misbehave. Every hour or so, we got a compiler notice, telling us something had been updated. This was a good thing. It meant something was different on a hardware level, like when something was disconnected or destroyed. But something was different. It was just after 6 p.m. Bodon was in a half-woken coma, and Jitka was playing games on her phone. The compiler message came in, but then it came in again, over and over and over. I waved Bodon over. "That makes no sense," he laughed. "No, I don't like that." He sat down next to me and took a closer look. Finally, he pulled up the logs, pointing at a particular line. "Is this a name change?" he asked. "What is this?" "I didn't touch it," I said. "Wait a minute." Looking a little closer, he checked the command logs. The moment he had stepped away from the computer, something had internally changed the prompt names. The compiler message no longer signaled something disconnecting. It signaled an extra call of an unknown process. "That means we haven't got an update in 9 hours, said Bodon. "Why is that? Wasn't it brought offline?" Jitka peeked her head in. "I can't get a hold of the boss," she said. "No one's answering." I got in my car and headed for the main office downtown. I got on a conference call with Jitka and Bodon to keep updated. We couldn't reach anyone. The service technicians, our boss, no one working on the Rattler. Hell, I couldn't even reach Christina, our government contact. I rushed to the main office, went through the checkpoints, and hurried up the stairs. As I did, my fingers cramped up, leaving me stuck with my hand on the railing. "What's wrong?" I heard Bodon say. "You all right?" My hand released, but my pulse was higher. I took a moment to collect myself. I reflected, was this a sense of déjà vu, or was it just a matter of being sleep-deprived? I stammered out the only thought I could muster. "I don't know." People had gone home for the day, but there had to be someone around since the alarms hadn't been set. It was usually whoever left last who engaged them. I looked around but couldn't see anyone. Just empty workrooms and half-lit cubicles. That and the ever-present Hatchet logo, underlined by their signature blue sunflower. Then I heard interference. A little crackle in the conference call. "Bodon," I said. "Can you hear me?" There was a response, but I couldn't make out the words. Then the call dropped. I stepped into the top-floor conference room, only to see a projector still running. There was a laptop there with some kind of presentation material. Apparently, my boss had been rehearsing for some kind of business meeting. Probably a crisis resolution team to deal with the Rattler going offline. Then I heard something. A shuffle. Looking a little closer, I could see one of the chairs being tilted. I rounded the table, but stopped myself. I didn't know what I might see, and I didn't know if I wanted to know. I considered turning around and just walking out of there. I could be on a train to Linz and gone before anyone cared to notice. But first, I had to check. I didn't recognize my boss at first. A man in his early 60s, wearing a white shirt with a red tie, curled up under the table like a dead insect trying to shield itself from the sun. Every finger pointing in different directions, like branches on a misgrown tree. Something in his eyes had broken loose, causing a slight gap between his socket and eyelid, as a streak of tears and blood still dripped. He was still as the grave, and more dead than any man I'd ever seen. I couldn't breathe. Was it the panic, or was it something else? I tried to stay calm, to stay rational. I tried to analyze my feelings, to see if I was experiencing distress or a rattle. But I couldn't. I fell over and crawled, pushing myself back up against the wall. But I couldn't look away. It looked so unreal, like a broken doll. I couldn't stop imagining him suddenly bursting into action. My hand cramped again, as the interference from my phone crackled to life. My pulse rose as my cheeks felt warm. A bead of sweat stung my eye. A slight cramp in my foot. Then it stopped, and the dead man moved. It was just a slight twitch of the throat, something rattling to life, using flesh like a marionette. Vibrations making his throat squirm, as the final breath in his lungs took shape. A voice as cold and remorseless as the void of space. My skin as blameless. His index finger cracked and turned to the side, like an earthworm reaching for the rain. As blameless as hands divine. 2 hands slammed into the fitted office carpet, blood mixing with the muted corporate red. Fingers curling every which way, as the corpse pulled itself an inch closer. Hands divine. A fingernail casually falling to the floor, as aimless eyes turned every which way. Divine. I scrambled to my feet, sprinting out the door. Not the door I came from, but the one across from me. Whatever was furthest away from this. All of this. Anything. My phone had burned out, leaving a smoking hole in the battery. Picking it up, I burned myself and dropped it, only to have it land in a puddle of blood. Looking up, I realized there were other victims. At least 8 people, all contorted into a pile in the middle of the corridor, reaching all the way to the ceiling. I couldn't tell where one began and one ended. Torn clothes, bones peering through open wounds, blood as black as oil, settling into the sole of my shoes. And the smell. It was this powerful chemical, like ammonia and chlorine, with that faint glow of iron settling in my lungs. I panicked. I turned around and headed for the fire exit. The doors were electronically locked, and my pass wasn't working. I could hear noises coming down the hall. A deep growling, where a word is drawn out to the point it becomes a cry. I had to force myself through the door with a fire axe. I almost threw myself off the fire escape. My hands were shaking so much that I almost slipped while reaching for the railing, but I kept going. I made it down to street level and ran for my car. The moment I got in the driver's seat, I had it called Jitka and Bodan. There was no answer. Getting back to the others, I found myself standing outside our main door. I didn't know what to expect. Or rather, I didn't want to know. I tried not to imagine them broken and disfigured, but I couldn't stop myself. Death could be waiting at the other side of the door, but I still tried my pass card. It worked. Bodan was on the floor. He wasn't dead and contorted, but he looked unconscious. Jitka was sitting on one of the conference chairs, leaning against the wall, clutching her legs. I stepped inside, looking over at the batch room. The screens were flashing white still. "It killed the service technicians hours ago," she whispered. "They never brought it offline." "False reports," I whispered back. "It's fed us what we want to see." "It's him," Jitka continued. "It's the man. The one the police wanted." "What about the dash?" "It's got everyone," she interrupted. "Even the lead investor." Wasn't he in Greece?" Jitka nodded. Apparently, someone had illegally connected the Rattler to an extended network. A far extended network. And they'd done so in the last few hours, unhindered. We couldn't shut it down anymore. We were effectively at its mercy. And with every beat of my heart, I didn't know what to expect. Step by step I approached the batch room and the many workstations. Command lines had turned to rambling, spouting apocalyptic nonsense. I could feel my eyes water, and I stopped. Jitka was already on her feet, as if ready to pull me back. This is probably what had happened to Bodan. He'd been too forward, and it had struck him down, but not killed him. There had to be a reason for that. "It needs us," I muttered. "You need us." The screen stopped for half a second, then resumed. It was listening. A ghost in the machine. The imprint of a serial killer melded into the core programming of our system. "You need something from us," I said. And we need something from you." Jitka screamed as her hand suddenly snapped. It was just a sprain, but enough to send her sprawling to the floor, crying in pain. "Just tell us what you want," I said. We can work something out." A single command line popped up on the screen, with a blinking square to indicate a need for action. "Run, Allegiance." I stepped into the room. The hairs on my arms stood up, and I had to blink away a sudden rush of blood going through my head. A sense of déjà vu goosebumps. Something electric, licking the details of my bones from afar. "Is this it?" I asked. A surge of warmth waded through me, and I looked out at Bodan and Jitka. They were still alive. I pressed the button, and we surrendered. A total of 16 people died that day. It was explained as freak accidents, medical issues, and a peculiar case of poisoning. Of course, those involved knew that wasn't the case, but they didn't care. They wanted it all swept under the rug, and they didn't want anyone to ask any questions. Our offsites were never taken offline. The archive and backups were kept running. The system had, if anything, optimized itself and brute forced access to entirely new networks. It's radio waves. It's everywhere. The Rattler has been kept online. At the start of this, it had the capacity to kill maybe 10 or 20 people a minute. With the extension it has forced us to complete, that number is a dream compared to what it can do today. Jitka, Bodan and I are the last people that fully understand the Rattler and what it does. People who have come too close to the project have disappeared, and Hatchet has kept us in maintenance mode. The Rattler seems pleased just to extend its power and influence, but it doesn't act on it. It's like it is collecting for something greater. It plays sometimes. It picks a person it doesn't like, someone resembling an old victim, or has a similar sounding name. It gleefully destroys them, like a child plucking the wings off a butterfly. It records the data and reviews it, playing their deaths on endless loops, forever burned into its system. It scans me every day, just to show that it's still there. It wakes me up at night. It teases and toys with me, knowing just what and where to poke to send me spiraling into an anxious panic. It loves it. It delights in it. My wife came back from Linz. My children are growing, and I live a comfortable, well-paid life. And they know nothing. No one does. They're just as safe here as anywhere else, really. Looking back on my life, I've come a far way from that little town near Litvinov. A place where the world felt small and insignificant. But with the way things are heading, and with the scope of death that can be aligned at the flick of a switch, the world feels smaller than ever. We live our lives as if nothing has happened. But when I look across the room at the desolate faces of Bodan and Jitka, we all understand. And as the Rattler playfully plucks another victim apart on our break room screen, we're not even allowed to look away. Instead we wait, we pray, and we don't know who'll be next.